Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Kat Fields-White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Today, we're going to chat about making your website and checking it twice.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Grapevine Local Food Marketing, specializing in marketing for farmers and markets. With Grapevine on your team, you don't need to learn HTML, CSS, SEO, or the rest of the online marketing alphabet to achieve ROI. They've got you covered. And since they specialize in farm marketing, they're already fluent in our language. You have enough to do. Connect with Grapevine for help with website design and updates, advertising, graphic design, and more. To schedule an initial consultation, click the Grapevine Local Food Marketing logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com and get started today.
Welcome back to Tent Talk. It's Thanksgiving week, and we want to note that we give thanks all year long for every listener and follower and all of our farmers and vendors and staff.
We have a lot to be grateful for.
We sure do.
Yep.
What a wonderful market family.
Wonderful market family. We live in a privileged place, no doubt about it. Any of us that are not in a high conflict zone should be giving big thanks this year.
Yes. Gratitude overfloweth. And thank you for listening, honestly.
Honestly.
Yep.
Yeah. You keep us going.
You really do. So this time of year, in between managing holiday events, we're doing a lot of end-of-year analysis and housekeeping. And one of the things we've noticed is that it's time for a website update.
Indeed. We're actually diving into sprucing up both our local markets websites and getting ready for a major overhaul of our Farmers Market Pros website. Do kids even learn cursive anymore? Do we need to change our logo? We're examining so many things.
Actually, my third grader is learning cursive. Gavin Newsom just passed
thank goodness.
Wait, there's like a law passed in California that kids have to learn cursive.
Okay, that's great for California.
Yeah.
What about the rest of the world? Can they read it?
Can you read our logo?
Yeah, so we're not actually redesigning the logo yet. We'll see what happens. We'll keep you posted, but we are doing a big overhaul of the site. We have a new web designer that we just love.
Yeah.
So, hey. Have you looked at your site lately?
Yeah, I should.
That's the thing. I'm talking to our listeners.
Oh, I was like, me? I'm like, let me look it up right now.
I know your answer. Kind of. Yeah, glanced at it.
No, I tried to keep up on it, actually.
You do a good job.
But yeah, I mean, just talking about, I feel like this podcast is really great for us because we try to think of topics and then we're like, oh, we need to do that sometime.
Let's do that now.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very helpful that our website is robust and is pretty current and has a lot of information on it that people are looking for, and that we kind of change it as people ask us questions like, oh, that's something we can just have static on the website.
Right, we can add.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're looking at it a lot on the market side because we actually update our vendors list periodically. Every once in a while we forget, and then we look at it and go, whoa, those guys haven't been here in a little while. But that's the thing about websites. Like all marketing stuff, it's not just, oh, we did that and we're done.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
Periodic reviews and updates of basic information is really important.
For sure. And when we say basic, we mean basic. Make sure your days and times are accurate. If you've changed anything, make sure that's listed on there. And make sure your days and times are front and center. Because a lot of the times people will end up on your website just looking for the day and time of your market. So just give it to them.
Don't hide it.
Don't hide it.
Yep. Did you put something on your homepage about any changes to your Thanksgiving week schedule?
Definitely.
This would be a good time to ask that.
Yes. Actually, yeah, last weekend, I didn't think to put this change anywhere, but I got like 100 calls asking if we were open on Veterans Day weekend.
Yeah, me too. We got so many emails on that.
Which was kind of felt bizarre to me just because I think in years past we have, I mean, like if there's a holiday-ish happening, people will call us and ask. But a lot of people were asking about Veterans Day weekend, and I was like, do farmers markets close for that weekend?
I don't know. I did notice that we got a lot of emails. I was watching the email side. We got a bunch of emails from Canadians asking if we were closed on Veterans Day. Maybe it's a bigger deal, or maybe they think for us it's a more of a gigantic national holiday that everybody takes off.
Like a closure holiday. Because I feel like we definitely celebrate Veterans Day and people want to honor that, but things aren't
I feel
like
everything closes down.
Maybe because the school is closed. I don't know.
Maybe they thought we were on a parade route.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, so making sure that any holiday-ish time is kind of
Note
noted.
that you're open if you're
Yeah,
open.
just say
And certainly
something.
if you have changes, you want to make that note.
And definitely say something about it. So coming up on Thanksgiving, it's not too late. If you're listening Thanksgiving week, you can pop that change in there because folks will be asking, are you open the day before? Like we have a Wednesday market and we're doing a lot of marketing to make sure that our shoppers know that, yes, we're open the day before Thanksgiving because maybe some markets are closing the day before because folks are busy or out of town, or if they have an evening market on Wednesday, maybe folks are saying, hey, I can't come. I have to prep for Thanksgiving or things like that. So just make whatever.
And also the Saturday after, because some people take that whole long weekend and maybe they're thinking that the farmers do too. We are definitely open.
We suggest being open, but either way, just say what it is.
Right.
Just say what is happening. Just
but your
tell
website
people.
is one of the key places. Not everybody's on social. Not everybody looks other places. If you don't want to take a million phone calls and emails, you'll get a little bit ahead of it if you update your website.
Yeah. Very helpful.
If you have a vendor list on your website, you want to keep that updated. People who see a vendor on your site and drive to your market only to hear from your team that they haven't been there in months are going to lose trust in your market and just generally be pretty cranky.
You know what happens sometimes is that the vendors will have our market listed on their website.
Well, you're right about that.
And that, which is, not completely in your control. Although I have tracked down some vendors and been like, hey, can you change this? But they'll come and say, oh, I came to get this person's stuff and it's on their website. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. They never came back after COVID or whatever. And so that's really important to have an accurate list. And then I just tell those people, maybe look at the market website as opposed to individual vendors because they're not updating it as much or something.
Sure, but you can't train the customers.
Yeah.
All you can do is train yourself and your team and hopefully your vendors to a certain extent.
Yeah, and for our vendors that are listening, keep your lists updated too, because then the people aren't going to get frustrated with you as a vendor if they go to a market that's listed on your site that you are not participating in anymore.
Or
and maybe
find somebody else that sells something similar to you. So you said you're at my market, but you're not. So somebody shows up, we're going to point them to somebody else that sells granola.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are at a different market, you want to make sure that your shoppers know that because they're tracking you down too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So kind of one of the basic things is determining who's your website aimed at. Shoppers, vendors? I mean, for most markets, the answer is both. So our market site is actually a bit more for vendors because we partner with business improvement districts who also have pages on their websites for the individual markets. So we've always, when we have a choice to make, we sort of emphasize that our website is about getting the vendors correct information, but still any member of the general public who Googles that market is likely to find their way to our website. So front and center, I mean, our homepage has that basic information: who, what, when, where, and the About page even has a little bit of why. So those old 4 W's that you might have learned in elementary school, those are critical on your homepage. Don't hide your location.
Don't hide your location. I mean, for shoppers, really, there's not a ton of information you have to give shoppers. I mean, you could
Maybe
certainly.
a vendor list.
Yeah, a vendor list, location, date, time, little story about you, maybe a picture or two. But for shoppers, it's pretty basic info that they really need. So just put that front and center, and then you can kind of fill out the rest of your website for your vendors.
Absolutely.
Potential vendors.
I mean, so there's been a trend over the years, and I feel like it's starting to come back around, thank goodness. But and not just markets, restaurants are super bad about this. But this trend of hiding the specific location and hours on your contact page or your About page, or not including that info at all. Do you only want insiders in the know to come? I mean, if you want people to come, tell them where you are and how to find you. So include your address, including the city and state.
Yeah.
There are so many Highland Park farmers markets in America. So let people know. Are you in New Jersey? Are you in Chicago? Are you in Washington State? Make sure the city and state is on there. Put the days and times on there. Update those regularly.
Yep.
And consider putting all of those basics, every single one, the address, the day, the time, in the footer. So people see it no matter what page of your website they're on.
Yeah, just give it to them. Just force
Make it easy
down their throat. Just shove that information in front of their face. Because really, if you're out, visiting a new town with friends and you're trying to find something to do, you're not sitting there at a computer focusing on what's on every page of the website. Just people's attention span is 6 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
So just give them what they're there for right away. And that's a marketing tool. If they can't find that information, they're going to go to the next thing.
Exactly.
And so you just lost a customer. So
well, and psychologically, every time they have to click again, they're making a decision whether to keep going or whether to just go back to Google and take their shot somewhere else. So The less they have to click around to find that basic information, the better. And in terms of searchability, if your city and state are on your website and somebody Googles farmers markets, Highland Park, Illinois, it's a good chance they will find their way to your website versus somebody else's.
Yeah, for sure. And then vendor info for shoppers. Like if you have a list of vendors, keep that updated, like we said.
In the Philly area, it's a whole thing. I think one market operation group started it, and they have a lot of markets. And then it seems like everybody else in that whole general area, even out to the suburbs, sort of copied them. So they have a website design where every single week they update. And if you look at Rittenhouse Farmers Market Tuesday, you'll see 10 little blocks of which vendors are going to be there that Tuesday, that week. And then they have a little list underneath that of might be back soon or somehow they phrase it. And it seems like all the markets do that. So they're really updating where they are. We have more on our markets. We have more of just a general list of all our vendors. We update that when a vendor leaves or when we add a new vendor.
Yeah. And I think sometimes I've been in the mindset where it's like, I want there to be a little mystery because I don't want people to look at the list and be like, I don't even know any of those vendors. I'm not going to go. As opposed to usually if people just show up, they'll figure out something that they want.
And that's acceptable too. You don't have to have a list of vendors.
Yeah. But I don't know. As someone who also shops farmers markets, and sometimes I shop markets when I'm traveling, obviously, or just going to other markets in town if I am free or in a different neighborhood, sometimes I'm just a little short on time and I need to know if there's a pickle vendor here because that's what I need. And so if I don't know, I'm probably going to skip it anyway. So it's kind of like riding that line and how much information do you want to give your shoppers and kind of figuring out what your tone is there. But we have a vendor list now. And so I feel like it's been helpful.
Yeah, I think it's important. And and as you say, a short list of what they sell.
Yeah.
So one of the problems with those markets that I was talking about is they have a picture of the farm and it says so-and-so farm, but it doesn't say what they sell. So I desperately need eggs. Eggs are one of those products that I'm really picky about. I don't buy them at the grocery store. I buy them at farmers markets. So when I'm trying to look at, okay, what day this week is there a farmer's market where there's an egg farmer? I need to know that information, people. Put that on your website, please.
Because oranges are not a substitute for eggs.
They are not.
So,
and neither are apples.
Yep.
It's not acceptable. I need the eggs. So we've had ongoing discussion for years and years about on that vendor list, whether you want to link those vendors' names to their websites. My general feeling is probably not. But I know a lot of people do, and they think that's great.
Yeah, it's again kind of riding that line between, yes, our job is to promote and, ensure the success of our farmers and vendors. And so anything we can do to market them, that is part of our job. But then also, do I want to send them to their website where they can get delivery or they can see all the other markets that they're in? And so it's kind of am I sending people away when I link to our vendors' websites?
And it's a little tricky for us because we're actually partnered with the local community organization. And so part of our job is to bring people to that community. That's part of the mission of that farmers market is to activate the community. So if we're sending people to a generalized website for a vendor that might take them elsewhere, that's not really fulfilling what the commitment we've made to our partner, the community organization. So there's a lot of things to take into account there.
Yeah.
What I do like that honestly, we were just saying we need to stop saying do as we say, not as we do, because we really do most of the things that we suggest. But one of the things I've thought about that we haven't done much, but I think is cool, is to do vendor profiles on your website. So, have a picture of the actual farmer and even just a few lines about their history or where they farm or what it is that they grow. That's why people shop at farmers markets. They don't shop because of price or convenience typically. They shop because of relationships. So if you have time to accomplish it and keep it up to date, farmer and vendor profiles can be really effective.
Yeah, and that's helpful too because people will sometimes not really realize what the farm name is when they're shopping, but they'll maybe see a picture and be like, oh, that's Bob Polito or that's Rodney Kawano. They can recognize farmers and say, oh, that's my favorite farmer. I see them all over the place. Or that's my favorite, gal to buy strawberries from at this market. So, yeah, it's helpful to make that connection.
That can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And then vendor info for vendors. So that's another big part of our website. Mostly, I'd say 2/3 of our website is geared for vendors because we are just always in the business of vendor applications and processing information and giving people information about how to become a vendor and could they become a vendor at our market and, so kind of spelling all of that out for them.
Yeah, making it simple. So you want to have an online application form, most likely. I mean, I think almost everybody does that now. But we see very few markets anymore that do that live and in person. It's mostly online. I guess somebody could be faxing or mailing, but mostly it's online nowadays. And then the other thing in addition to the application is leading into the application. You want to have enough info to not have to deal with a whole bunch of applications from people who aren't a good fit. So some basic info on what's needed at the market, what kind of categories you accept. If you only accept farmers within 50 miles of your market, go ahead and say that and don't spend a lot of time vetting applications from people that are the next state over.
Again, you don't have to be mysterious.
Right.
Like, just spell it out. There's, other markets most likely in your area. You could be the only market, but if you have rules, then you have rules, or you have criteria or guidelines or regulations that prohibit you from hosting certain vendors. So just say it. And you'll save yourself a bunch of time as well as their time applying.
Absolutely. Some basic info on what's required to be a vendor. That'll save you from some of those many, many calls and emails to say, hey, I'm thinking about selling at farmers markets. How does that work? So if you put a little basic info on what kind of permits are required for various categories, if you require insurance, we hope you do. Mention that on the website so people know that that's what's required. And then a little intro maybe that gives folks some hints on what's needed at the market. We're always looking for mustard.
Yeah.
And what categories are full. Like if you got jewelry, I'm sorry, but we don't have any room for that, so don't spend your time applying.
I just had a guy come to the info booth a couple weeks ago at the market, and he's like, I'm a chef, and he makes like meatball sandwiches or something. And I was like, oh, he's like, I saw that you're full of prepared food at this market. He's like, but I make the most delicious meatball sandwich. He's like, I'd love to like bring you one. I'm like, well, you can bring me lunch, but I'm like, you still can't get in. He's like, I also saw that you guys are in need of like this. He's like, I think I could make mustard. I'm like, sir, go home and make some mustard right now and come back.
Right?
He's like, I don't really want to make mustard. I'm like, well, can you force yourself to want to? He was like, I'll get back to you. But it was just such a funny conversation because then we had the same conversation. And he was like, that's great that you just put that information out there because then I knew he like didn't send an application in for his meatball sandwiches because he's like, It was very clear that we just aren't accepting any more prepared food at our market and probably not anytime likely soon. And that these are the things that we want. So it's good to keep that updated because you might get somebody who can make something else and they might end up doing really well making that product because you put a little bug in their ear about it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Some folks post fees in that section. We typically don't. If you're pretty consistent about your fees, there's probably no good reason to not put that in there.
Yeah.
Let people know what it is that you're charging so they're ready. We actually have sort of a flexible fee schedule. Our fees vary a little bit depending on whether people are farmers or they're grocery or there's some hybrid of grocery and prepared food. That all changes a little bit. And until a market is really well established, we've also actually more after a market's really well established now that I think about it. But sometimes those fees will vary based on what the saturation level of your category is. So at this point, if I was taking somebody with prepared food, they'd probably pay more just because we have so many applications for that.
Yeah.
Whereas, a farmer's still going to be at that really low rate.
Yeah. And then just be upfront about that and then they can make a decision about if they want to participate or not.
Yeah.
So.
But if you have a variable fee schedule, it's probably easier to not put it on and because you're going to making some of those decisions based on all the information on that application.
Yeah.
So that's
I know. I kind of go back and forth about how much info to share regarding that. But yeah. I think more information is usually better.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I think would be helpful, I saw this on somebody's website. I think that it was not a farmer's market. It was something else. Might have been a public market. But it was somewhere where they were, I think it was leasing info for maybe a public market where they had more consistent stands that you have to, commit to a longer lease. But testimonials from other vendors, I think would be such a good idea in your vendor applications section. Don't make them anonymous. I personally believe there's kind of zero credibility to an anonymous testimonial.
Yeah.
But if you got vendors that actually want to own up and say, hey, it's the best market I ever attended. It's really organized. We get nice foot traffic and run a few of those.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're actively looking for vendors, trying to add vendors, that could be really powerful.
For sure. I think that's a good idea, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that idea. Thinking of some vendors right now.
That's right.
I'm
Me
like,
too.
Maya,
especially for kind of our
Lowell.
newer markets.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Social media links, that's important to have on your website. And again, I'd almost put it in the footer so that people can find it anywhere because in general, it feels easier to update social than a website day to day. So you want to send people to the most current information. So if your social links are on your website, I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good because as a consumer of information online, I'd say I'd go to a website and even if a market was like, we're open rain or shine, I'd be like, are you really? I'd want to see your Instagram and you like posting a story in real time at the market while it's drizzling.
Exactly.
To really make sure. So that's more of like a double check this information. So if you have an active social media, link it on there. If your social media is dead or you're posting once a month or something, you should still link to it, but you don't have to really make a big, maybe actually just start posting more than that. But yeah, you don't have to post it everywhere. But if you have a very active social media, that is like such a great marketing tool, and making that information really obvious and accessible on your website is helpful.
For sure. And some farmers and vendors especially just have landing pages as in terms of a website, and then they have very active social. And so that can be really effective. Just have a good landing page that, again, has that basic information. Where are you? When are you there? What do you sell? But then links to social, which maybe has more active, up-to-date information. What's in season this week? Where am I right now? That kind of thing. You do still need that landing page, though. Even if your social is really active, I think a website landing page is so important. It's kind of like, okay, granted, I'm the boomer in the room, but, it used to be you weren't a real business unless you were in the yellow pages. I still kind of think you're not a real business unless you've got a website. You think that's over? What do you think there, younger person? You representing the youth?
40 years old, young, 40 years young, right?
You want to call your daughter? Do we get an update from the current generation?
I don't think my daughter goes onto websites.
Interesting. Okay, good call.
I could be wrong, but I don't
be giving
think so.
Outdated information.
But is a 22-year-old our target market?
Maybe not.
I mean, they are, as well as Bert to Bert years old,
right?
However old you are. But like there are, I'd say for farmers markets, 0 to 100 years old is your target market. So kind of having that information for everyone is helpful. I do think having a landing page, like a landing website.
At least a landing page.
Yeah. I mean, you can make like a wiki page like there's ways to do it now where it's not super complicated and expensive.
Right.
So I do think that that's like more legit.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I have seen some people doing Facebook as their landing page. Like if you're on Instagram, you click their website, it goes to their Facebook page. I personally think that's weird, but again, I'm the oldster. Maybe that's okay.
I just don't know about that because I feel like now it's kind of like it's getting like cool to get off social media or whatever. And there's just like my husband's not on social media.
True.
Like I guess he could look at a Facebook landing page, but he wouldn't know how to navigate it. And I mean, he's not super old. So I just think, you're not really appealing to everybody if all your information is only on social media.
Correct.
You need to kind of,
I agree.
I mean, for better or for worse, have
landing pages for
everywhere.
life. That's our motto now.
Yeah.
Your About Us page, most folks have that. Usually you would include something like your market mission. I think it would be great to put a sentence or two about why it's important to shop at farmers markets. So many people don't know that. They don't know that they're making a huge difference to financial stability of farmers by shopping at farmers markets. Let's all get together and spread that message. Everybody put those sentences on your website, please.
Wait, I have a great idea. Everyone who's listening, let's all put farmers markets don't just happen on our website.
That's a good idea. Let's do it.
I feel like we should because now we have our team has sweatshirts that have that on there now. And so many customers and vendors, I think we talked about this in a recent episode, are like, that's true. I never thought about that. Like, that's great. That's funny. And like, thanks for reminding us.
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
Let's add that.
Let's all gang up, guys.
Yep. You could have a team button on your website, or maybe you can list that included in the About Us page. So your market staff, your team. We've had some conversation about, does your team want their pictures and their names on there? And if so, is it just first names? Is it last names? Is it an alias? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you want on your website?
Is your team in witness protection?
Right. There's that.
We've done different variations.
That's true.
Right now, we don't have team stuff on there. I think we kind of took everything down at COVID because we pretty much,
that's why. You're right.
Our team was laid off and then we got a whole new team and we just never kind of went back to that. But
nobody wanted more attention from people who harass them. Yeah.
Also that. But I think you could do individual. We used to have like individual and then we'd say like what our favorite thing at the market was. So if your team's up for that, or you could just have like a group picture.
Yeah.
And say like, this is our team. Like we take group pictures a lot so that we can post on social like, hey, this is our team. So maybe just a group photo.
That's a good idea.
And you don't have to have names or you can, or just first names or whatever. But just like a little recognition I think is nice for your staff and for the shoppers and vendors that are looking at your website to know that there's like there's people here. And maybe you have volunteers. And maybe it's just you and you can say, hi, I'm the team.
Yeah. Or I'm the manager.
Yeah.
And the team.
Mm-hmm.
Job postings, that's a good spot to put that if you're hiring. And we actually leave a static job description up of our typical market manager assistants. And just a note that, no current openings, but at least it tells people what's required for those folks that don't really understand what working in a market is about. I like food.
I love farms. Well,
Okay.
Call a farm.
How do you feel about event management?
How do you feel about porta potties?
Hauling barricades. Right?
And sometimes we forget to take off our live job posting even after we've hired somebody, and
True.
then we get a bunch of applications. So
That's true.
make sure to be clear if you're hiring or not.
For sure. Let's
Yeah.
not break people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also is likely where you would put board info if you have a board of directors that you might want to acknowledge, or your sponsor organization, whoever you're partnering with for your permit, that kind of thing. That's a good spot for that.
Mm-hmm. And then other kind of FAQs. I like a good FAQ, actually.
We have a good FAQ page.
When I go to websites, I like an FAQ because it's like, just give me all this information on one page. I don't have to click around.
And you're saving yourself a lot of phone calls and emails. If
Sure.
you have this, if you have another place people can find these things.
I love it. So maybe an FAQ for shoppers, an FAQ for potential vendors. Just make sure it gets updated. So yeah, I see a lot of websites with like COVID guideline, like peak COVID guidelines, like you must stay 6 feet apart, and there's metered entry and things. There are a lot of not just farmers markets, but restaurants and things like that just never took that stuff off. And I mean, obviously, we kind of get it now that that's probably not current, but just clean it up.
Go check and clean it up.
Go check, because that just makes you look like you're not up to. And then I wouldn't trust that anything's current on that website.
I mean, that's what that's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good place for policies on dogs, tips on parking.
Yeah.
Yeah. All kinds of things that go there.
Yeah. Just any kind of little tips,
Right.
or
open, rain or shine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe a little like stay in the neighborhood, and maybe a link to like the neighborhood restaurant list or something like that. I mean, just little things. So people are making a day of it, coming to your market. They know what else to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sponsor page.
Definitely.
That's handy. Or I see people put sponsors on their homepage sometimes, and those people are probably getting really good sponsor participation because that's a benefit for sponsoring, obviously. So we do a sponsor of the day. We might or we might not put that on a website. We have not to date. But definitely a spot on your website for annual sponsors and marketing partners, because that so much increases the value of what they're spending to partner with you or to sponsor you.
Yeah.
And that
just
helps your income.
For sure. And if I were a sponsor of a farmer's market, like I'd feel so much pride like being on their website
For
as
sure.
well. So yeah. And then try to think about this beforehand, like who is updating? Who's in charge of updating your site? Who is allowed to update your site?
Who knows how to update your site?
Who knows how to update your site? Yes. Yeah. And then is it like a webmaster that manages it, or can you make basic updates on your own? I feel like this was a lot harder even just a few years ago. But now a lot of websites are pretty easy to do basic updates yourself. You can watch tutorial videos on YouTube or whatever, or have your webmaster give you some hints.
Give you some. Because some things that are super fluid, you want to be able to do yourself. Vendor lists or holiday hours updating, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then when you're kind of ready for a big refresh or making any significant changes with your market, like if you're like changing your logo, your branding, those probably better left to a professional if you're not super versed in that. But you want to make sure you can make like little changes, day-to-day changes. Yeah.
And actually, so if you think you might be changing graphics or making more complicated changes often, it's not a bad idea to have your designer on retainer. So they're handy, so that you just pay them X amount of money per month and they can answer little questions or make little graphic changes during the month without having to go through a whole contract negotiation to get something fixed.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. There are some markets that are operated by city staff, and sometimes those cities have protocols where your market staff may not have access to your website. You actually have to go to the city's webmaster to get things changed. That can be so cumbersome for people. We've actually had people in our private group ask, how do I do this? How do I manage this? My information is never updated because the city has to do it. So you might think about that when you're just at your annual review or any kind of team meetings that you're having with your city administrators and things. Talk about that some limited access to be able to update would be good, or some kind of priority system with your web manager so that you can get those updates made, or at the very least, having the market manager or some staff person related to the market having access to social media so that at least you can do really up-to-date notifications. I mean, if your market is suddenly in a storm that involves lightning and high winds and you're going to have to close, you don't want to have to put in a requisition to the city webmaster to get that information out.
That is a great point. And like, do that now. Figure out who is the person that you contact. How do you get a hold of them? How long are changes going to be made, or how long is it going to take for changes to be made before you need something changed?
Right.
So like, you're not in some urgent situation. Even if your website, the page looks great and the social is looking great, say, okay, in the future, if I need to change something, how am I going to go about that, and how quickly is it going to get done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just establish that.
That's and do a little check-in. Do a little check-in every once in a while.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely easy to feel that if you spend a lot of time keeping your social media vibrant, websites aren't important. But that old saying about growing your social media following is like building your house on someone else's land. It's very true. Who knows what's going to happen? Your website is pretty much yours, and no one can change the rules, adjust the algorithm, limit your reach or your design on your website. Drama and conflict that makes people take a break from social doesn't happen on your website. I mean, it's probably not a comment section on your website.
Thank goodness.
We don't suggest that. Websites are important, so make yours a valuable tool and keep that tool sharp.
Thank you for listening today. And thanks to Grapevine Local Food Marketing for supporting farmers and markets with all of their marketing needs, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Grapevine understands farming and marketing, so they know what you need to be successful. Click the Grapevine Local Food Marketing logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com to get started today.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros community. Follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros, and find online education and other resources on our website at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is produced by Leandra Hayes, with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.